evening. Can everyone hear me? There it is. Thanks, Josh. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, May 19th meeting of the Bennington Select Board. We are this evening in the multi-purpose room on the third floor of the Bennington Fire Facility on River Street in Bennington. My name is Tom Haley. I have the honor of chairing this board, and I will begin, as always, by asking my fellow board members to please introduce themselves, starting with Nancy. Thank you.
Hi, Nancy White.
Yes, good evening, Sarah Perrin.
Jim Sullivan.
Good evening, Jackie Matz.
I'm Ed Woods.
And I'm Clark Dunham.
Also with us tonight is Stu Hurd, our town manager, Nancy Lively, who always takes most excellent minutes, and Josh Boucher is recording us for Cat TV, which we always appreciate. So, as the first item on the agenda, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. Ed, would you mind leading us? Thanks very much. Yeah, that delay on the Zoom kind of makes it a little complicated, but we'll figure that out as we go. And I have asked Sarah to read our vision statement this evening to remind us of what we all aspire to.
Sure, yeah, I like that we're going to change, so that's nice. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of May 12th, the warrants, and I believe one license. For the purposes of discussion, could I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion?
I have one item for the minutes. On page 7, line 245. Oh, I believe I'll speak closer. On line 7, page 7, line 245, I think the end of that says, will we then proceed further? But the intent was, will we then vote to proceed further?
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Very good. Hearing no other changes, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we are unanimous. Next up, we have public comment. I'll remind everyone that public comment is a chance for the public to present information that is for the good of all. It is not a time for back and forth discussion. If questions are raised that we are able to answer in a timely fashion, we will do so at the end of the public comment period. So first up, we have Maria Corrales on a procedural issue.
First, clarification regarding this statement. I believe this is public comment and agenda items. You can ask questions following each agenda item, correct?
Right?
Okay. Should my 3 minutes begin? So I read in the newspaper that our select board members have been asked to join other towns in support of ideals regarding due process. But the request itself for me contradicts.
This is an agenda item, if I could interrupt.
Yeah, I'm wondering if
No,
it is on the
public
agenda.
comment. Public comment. It's a public comment.
Yeah, when we get to that item, if you're talking about that particular topic.
But that's a question. I don't have a question. A public comment.
Well, no, we also take public comment before each.
So I'm going to raise the issue of the extension
That would be,
of that.
that'll be the
due
appropriate
process.
time then.
Excuse me, sir?
I think it would be the appropriate time then if we're talking about
But
that
I don't
topic.
have a question.
That's fine. The public comment before the agenda item isn't necessarily a question. It could also be,
But you don't know what my public comment is.
but you said it was about an item, you were related to an item
No,
on the
I said I
agenda.
read an article that you would ask to join other towns on that issue.
The
Right.
issues on the agenda.
Yeah, the
if there
issues
is
on the
public
agenda. Let's
comment,
talk about it then,
We'll take
please.
it
So then
then.
you don't know what my issue is then. I just said it begins with that.
Is it unrelated to the agenda item?
Yes.
You know, let's get it over, please.
Okay.
Thanks.
My issue is this. If the select board members represent constituents, right? How do you make a decision that's going to affect all constituents as a body? So for instance, if you're going to make a decision to support other town ideology or a state ideology, for instance, how do you make that decision when it's going to affect all taxpayers? For instance, benefiting some group more, or outcome is going to affect all constituents? Why don't we have a say, a voting say, when something affects our tax dollars?
Is that the end of your comment?
Yeah, I had a lot more, but you didn't want to hear it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have Deb Matt, who wants to speak on the senior center.
Deb Matt, Bennington. I really don't know how to say this, other than I'm going to give it a shot. But it's looking like the Bennington Senior Center is not going to exist anymore. We've been told that we're going to have to join the Y in order to go to the senior center. And for years, we've all been told we won't have to pay to attend the senior center. And Eleanor and myself had a meeting last week with Taylor and Kayla, and we have the senior center until the 1st of June to store our supplies and consolidate the rest into one room so the Y can store their exercise equipment for the classes they are bringing in the 1st of June. And I'm confused as to why they're moving these classes from the sports center into our facility. And it feels like a conflict of interest with the Y running the senior center, because I don't feel they're putting as much effort into finding programs and things for the seniors as they seem to be pushing to get stuff for the Y to increase the bottom line. And again, I'm hearing people saying that they don't feel welcome there anymore. It's so sad of what's happening. I don't know how to explain it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Next up is Jack Roster-Munley on BCMCC events.
Hi there, Jack Rossiter-Munley, Bennington, Vermont. I am here this evening, as I so often am, for the Bennington County Multicultural Community Center, and we have a couple of really wonderful upcoming events and one that just transpired that I want to tell you about. But before I get to that, I have some really wonderful news, which is that, as many of you know, the refugee arrival program on the national level has been indefinitely halted, but through a partnership with a group called No One Left Behind, we are still finding ways to welcome people who are escaping from Afghanistan and following the remaining legal processes that are available to come to the United States through acquiring what's called a special immigrant visa. And we've welcomed people with that status before. They used to travel through the refugee arrival program. Now people who are able to make their way either through their own funding or through an organization like No One Left Behind, they are able to travel to the United States. And we will be welcoming a family of 3 people, someone who was a medical doctor who up until recently was helping other people with SIV status complete their medical screenings to also travel, a young woman who is his wife, who's pregnant with their 2nd child, and the young child who's already with them. So we're very excited about that. It's a really been a really, it's helped lift the spirits around the center, and it is also something where we get to come to the community because welcoming people through the official process used to be covered under a federal program, which was the first one that was cut along with the Halton refugee arrivals. So we are doing a specific fundraising drive to sponsor this family and to help them get their feet under them in the United States. You can send a message to benningtoncountymcc@gmail.com. That's benningtoncountymcc@gmail.com, and we can give you the specific information about that. Beyond that, we have a couple of upcoming events. The first one is actually tomorrow night at the Manchester Community Library, where we're giving the Manchester community a little bit of background on the work that we do here in Bennington, because we do want to live up to our name of being a truly county-wide organization. And so that will be at the Manchester Community Library at 5:30 tomorrow night. Even if you just want to go up and check out the Manchester Library, it's a great excuse to do so. And then you can save the date for June the 8th. That's Sunday, June the 8th. We will be hosting a Know Your Rights training, time and location to be shared shortly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack. Next up, Mike Bethel. Mike, you didn't share a topic with us.
It's a mystery.
You're a man of mystery, Mike.
Well, actually, it's a couple of things. And since I can't reach up there, I thought you used to have a table like that for the podium, for the handicap. Not that I'm handicapped, but I'm handicapped. And also that button downstairs, are you doing that purposely, turning that off? Because it don't work to get in the door?
It's supposed to be on. I don't know.
I'll check it tonight on my way out.
Well, I already checked it. It didn't work. A couple of things. One, I'd like to ask, you have some kind of a meeting with the director of the YMCA. So the seniors do know what's going on with the senior center and clarify the confusion. I don't think that's much to ask. Secondly, you want to wait and let people talk on what's the agenda, right? On what topic is the agenda, the
Right.
Resolution.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing, I just talked to Ed over there a little bit about it. I'd like to see if you guys would start to look to form a committee. You, the select board, have the right to form a committee of your own responsible to you to see what we can do to talk about businesses in Bennington, bring businesses here, support the businesses that are here, and have it separate from the chamber and the BBC and all of that. Get some new ideas of the people that do have skin in the game, are living here, working here, and trying to make a living here. I don't think it would hurt us this summer to do that. And you guys might gather some, hopefully, valuable information and might be able to use it. So that's all I have to say today, but I will be back if you fix that goddamn button out there so I can get in. Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mike.
excuse me, I didn't mean to swear. I was praying at that moment.
Mike, thanks for letting us know about that, though.
Yes,
Oh, that's all right.
indeed. And finally here, we have William Greer with the legislative update.
There we go. Okay. Hi, guys. So this week's legislative update is going to cover a few votes that we had last week and also a few of the upcoming ones. We're in the final stretch of the session. So the first one I really want to talk about is around housing. So the Community Housing Improvement Program, which we're referring to as CHIP, is the overarching program that's part of a larger bill, S127. And so just a few things, because it's a big moving bill, a few things to note, just as I'm reviewing what I expect to, vote on. It's just also important for everyone in the community to know about. So the first thing is that, what's existed for a while is the tax increment financing, or TIF districts, as we call them. This bill still preserves that structure, and so I thought that was important, of course, because cities like Barry and Burlington have really benefited from it and done exceptionally well under it. But Bennington, of course, we haven't seen those same kind of benefits through the TIF program. So at least S127 is giving us some more options and expanding choices for us to be able to pursue more development here in Bennington. The big thing that was changed in the bill is now there's a cap and there's review about changing that cap on the program. So right now, the funding cap's $40 million, and for a variety of reasons, that revenue to finance the CHIP program, like TIF as well, is going to be leveraged through the education fund. And so there's going to be a $40 million cap, which will be used to leverage about $150 million to $250 million I believe annually, over the next 5 years for housing development. And they project about, this is a middle road ballpark, about 5,000 new units across the state. Just to be clear, big difference between CHIP and TIF. CHIP is more of a developer-based approach to building more housing, something that we're seeing happening in other states. TIF, of course, is more voter municipality-based, so there's going to be a lot more flexibility with CHIP and communities being able to pursue that. In terms of votes that have happened, we passed the budget. The legislature was very supportive of it, and I think that it really, compared to previous budget years, though I was not part of it, it sounds like we've got somewhere compromising and working together, and it sounds like the governor's even behind it. S12 is a bill that's still working its way through the House. This relates to sealing criminal records rather than taking the full-on expungement route for a lot of criminal records. So the legislature's working to get that through before the finish line. Just a general update on education. So it's passed out of the committees of jurisdiction in the Senate, and I believe it's already been voted on in the Senate or about to be voted on in the Senate, but it will be sent to the House this week. And so we're going to send that to a committee of conference. They'll work out the details. I don't want to get into too much because the Senate and the House seem to have a lot of different opinions on this, so it's probably all going to change, but I'll give you an update on that as soon as possible once we know more. But other than that, that's it for today. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak on a topic not on the agenda that didn't get a chance to sign up? All right, very good. All right, then moving along.
Tom, can I add something?
About?
Well, I really think the board needs to discuss the senior center. This has been going on too long.
I don't disagree. Jim and I already told Mike, I think, that we would discuss some way to try to get some answers out to the community.
The whole board is going to discuss this?
I think we could find a way to make that happen. I just haven't figured out how we can make that work yet. And I'd like to get it done sooner than
We in Bennington pay for the
later.
senior center, and it's been clear that they're supposed to be there for free. And I didn't realize the programs, as we pay to rent Catamount for the Y, I didn't realize seniors had to pay to go there.
Well, let's save this for when we can get it on the agenda, but we'll find a way to do that in the near future, I
Debbie's been
think.
raising concerns now for a while.
I agree. All right, next, we have a couple of resolutions. So the first resolution we're going to be taking a look at this evening is a resolution affirming constitutional rights as stated on the agenda. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask Jim if he would read the resolution, at which point I'll open it up to the public for comment. Then if someone on the board wishes to make a motion to accept that resolution, we will discuss it as a board. So, Jim, if you would, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. As Tom mentioned, this is a resolution affirming the constitutional rights of all people in Bennington. Whereas the United States Constitution guarantees due process, equal protection, and fundamental rights to all persons, regardless of citizenship, immigration status, race, religion, or political belief, and whereas recent actions by federal authorities regarding detention of legal residents without due process represents a violation of these constitutional protections, and whereas public officials must speak out against such abuses to discourage those who would dismantle the rule of law and divide our communities through fear, and whereas the Bennington Select Board unequivocally condemns all violations of due process and other unlawful acts, and whereas the town of Bennington affirms its unwavering commitment to protecting the constitutional rights of all people in our town, regardless of citizenship status, national origin, political belief, or any other identity. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Bennington Select Board opposes any policy or action, local, state, or federal, that targets individuals based on who they are, where they come from, or what they believe or say, and defines Bennington as a community rooted in justice, accountability, and the equal dignity of all.
Thank you very much. Before we move into public comment, I'll remind everyone that we are going to be civil. We're not going to let public comment turn into a debate amongst the public commenters. As everyone comes up and wishes to speak, I see a lot of people here tonight. Please do try to keep your comments as brief as possible so we can fit in as many of you as we can. So, that being said, who would like to speak? I saw Bruce first, Bruce Lee Clark.
Bruce Lee Clark, excuse me, Town of Bennington. Why a proclamation? Well, after having written a letter to the editor regarding due process, and after having stood out in front of the South Street Courthouse for a while, one Saturday a couple weeks ago, it was my observation that after a number of years, actually, as a lawyer and as an educator, there is a general woeful ignorance from the general public regarding these general principles that are now seemingly in question. The principles of rule of law, the principle especially of due process of law. Let me remind you and urge you to support this resolution because, as it states in the Fifth Amendment, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. No person. That means that all persons are entitled to notice of whatever the official action is regarding them. And secondly, all persons are entitled to the opportunity to be heard in front of a neutral adjudicator. The 14th Amendment makes that applicable to the states. Those rights had their origin in the West, anyway, in a document called the Magna Carta in the 13th century. But one notable change was that the Magna Carta began protecting the rights of free men, and they meant men. And now our founders changed that language to no person. It's incredibly important. In my experience, law enforcement, local law enforcement, state law enforcement has never needed a primer in due process. That is not the group to which I think this particular resolution is aimed. However, I would say, gathering from the comments that I have received locally and in town, I would say a good number of people seem to be confused about due process and the rest of the rights in the Bill of Rights and the nature of the rule of law. And so this proclamation, if you pass it, and I hope you will in fact help us to further educate. The one thing I would add is that our current experience with regard to federal officers is much more troubling. I believe that they do know and should know better. The opinions of both judges, federal judges, Crawford and Sessions, I urge you to read them, they're available online, regarding the taking of persons without any due process, in fact highlights the importance of this particular resolution before this board tonight. And so I urge your adoption. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maria?
Not everyone has the privilege of being an attorney, or some of you might have law degrees, but proper methodology for determining which rights should be protected has always been a hotly contested issue. Procedural due process, individual rights listed with the Bill of Rights, substantive due process, all of that. I don't understand it, and I'm sure the average person doesn't either. So I'm saying that if we're making a decision when we don't have full knowledge of every aspect of those protections, right? Signing off on something when we don't know what the after effects could be detrimental. So for you to ask constituents or even our select board body to sign off on something without having a depth conversation of where the contested issues might be, it's not fair, because you're deciding for all of us. And we may not all agree on the same ideology. Everyone should have the same privileges, everyone should have the same protections, but we also know that these constitutional rights are not, do not protect everyone when they break laws. And that's the point of this contested issues is if you break laws, any laws, you lose your rights. Whether you're an American-born, nationalized-born, or foreign-born, it doesn't matter. So I think that making this broad affirmation for something that we haven't had discussions about where the contested issues are, it's not fair. It's not fair to all constituents, because we will pay in the end when people want to redefine what citizen means, or we will pay in the end when we say additional privileges have been afforded, and it has to come from taxpayer dollars. We have to be careful where we sign off on things without really, really evaluating where the contested issues are.
Thank you, Maria. Go with Ms. Chu.
My name is Lonnie Chu, Bennington. My husband and I recently moved here. We're thrilled to be here. We love this town. We come at a very difficult time for this country, and just listening to the folks who have spoken so far, it's clear that along with this proposal needs to be a lot of education. I think most of us don't remember our civics classes from maybe 50, 60 years ago in my case. So I do hope that if this is passed, that there is an effort to communicate very clearly to the citizens of Bennington just what due process is and why all persons legally have that protection under our Constitution. My own concern that I have been thinking about lately is what happens at the point when that due process is not followed through on by either a federal official in our town or somebody who's posing as a federal official but comes to our town like they have done in some of the towns in Massachusetts as well as Vermont and other places. They show up posing as federal officials, or they are federal officials and they don't afford due process, and what they are actually doing is kidnapping people. So my question is, for the police officers who are in the position of enforcing our laws, will they have the training necessary to do what up until now has been the unthinkable, and that is to prevent kidnappings on the part of federal officials or those who are posing as federal officials? They could be, I won't go into the number of types of people that may choose to pose as federal officials. But these kidnappings take place very quickly. Often neighbors don't have a chance to see what's happening. But if they do, and if they call 911 and police officers are involved, do these police officers know how to protect us from these illegal acts? And I'll just go back to what I said at the very beginning. It is vitally important that a process of educating everyone in this town about what due process is and what our rights actually are, all of our rights, all persons, what those rights are under our Constitution. I think many of us have fortunately been able to forget those things because they were always understood, that we just knew it would be there. Now we don't know that it's going to be there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Leslie?
Hi, Leslie Addison, North Bennington. Thank you. Terrific. I just wanted to drill this down to the local level, so it's without constitutional debate. So I am wholeheartedly in support of this resolution. The responsibility of a town government is to act in a manner consistent with the United States Constitution, which is obvious. The town's objectives and guiding principles that are affirmed in publicly available sources include key language that aligns with or supports due process, equal protection, and fundamental rights of all people in Bennington, as stated in this resolution. These sources include the town's vision statement, its resolution of inclusion, the Community Policing Advisory Review Board 2025 resolution, the Safety and Equity Task Force scope and practice, and the Bennington Police mission statement. Examples of this key language are safety, inclusion, quality of life, fair and equal treatment of everyone, fair and impartial policing, everyone regardless of identity, collaborative efforts that are conducive to hear all voices, to name a few. It is easy to assert that detention without due process violates all of these guiding principles. Lastly, neither the town's principles nor this resolution ascribe to a particular political party any more than our collective recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. So I believe the town of Bennington is well within its purview and precedent to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back.
I wasn't going to speak on this topic, but I figure...
I'm sorry, could you please just identify yourself?
My name is Stephanie Darty. I am a resident of Bennington. I was not going to speak on this topic, but I do remember my high school and middle school civics classes. So a really, really brief layperson's explanation of due process of law. Very simply, it is the process by which we find out in a court of law what rights a person has. That is for a judge and frequently for a jury. That is not for a police officer to decide. That is not for a president to decide. That is not for any private person to decide. That is for a court of law. Anytime someone is deprived of life or liberty or even property, they have the right to challenge that in a court of law. That is due process of law boiled down to its most simple concept. This right does not go away if you are a criminal. This right does not go away if you are an undocumented immigrant. This right does not even go away if you are a traitor to this country. You have the right to challenge the facts of your case and the laws that apply to that case in a courtroom and have your case heard. This is one of our most important constitutional principles, and what separated us from, as we may recall, just a few weeks ago, we celebrated our separation from the King of England, and the March on Fort Ticonderoga. That historical event that we just remembered was because the king was not applying the rule of law, because the king was depriving us of due process of law, and that is why we have enshrined it into our Constitution. Most importantly, our Constitution has a process for change. it is not something that it is meant to be resistant to popular opinion. It is meant to be a difficult process to change. It requires the consent of 2/3 of the legislators of the states, and it is not a quick process. It's that way for a reason, because we held these protections in our Constitution sacred, that everybody is equal before the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that hasn't spoken wish to speak? Mr. Hurley? Oh.
It's me again. I feel like I'm at a Democratic rally somewhere. You know, I don't think this is fair to put this on the select board. It isn't fair for the select board to do this without a bigger say from the general public. Nobody in this town is against the Constitution. Nobody. Okay? There was a new finding today in the law that they're going to go look at again. I'm not a lawyer like Bruce is, but it does give Trump more in his favor of getting the illegal people that have come over the border out of this country. You can watch it tonight on the news or go on your computer or whatever. You people are put in a spot that you shouldn't be put in. You're supposed to represent the needs and the wants financially of the people of Bennington. You're not the conscience of the people of Bennington. I agree with some of the things these people say. Everybody has due process. But when you come in this country and break the law just getting in this country, I believe you do lose some of your rights, or you lose all of your rights. Go back to your country and fight for your rights in your country. We have enough things in this country and in this town. You've got enough on your plate right now. You don't need to deal with this. And I guarantee you, there's only one Republican sitting in that board today. There's only one Republican. So this does seem like a Democratic convention, and I don't think you should be voting for that way. You didn't put R or D or independent on your name tag, did you? None of you do. You're into a political game here. I don't like it. I don't like these people here all turning it into it. It's my town also. I don't have a law degree. I don't have a lot of money, but it's my town too. And I don't like these people speaking up, saying that the people of Bennington don't have a conscience about the Constitution. I'll rest my case there. You vote the way you want. I can't do anything about it, but I urge you people to table this for another meeting or two, and you don't need all that whereas's in that resolution. You can cut it down to about 3 that I think the majority of the town would go along with. So I thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Jack, do you want to go now?
Hi, can you hear me all right, or? Yeah, just don't think it's picking me up. Hello? Oh, there we go. Name's Ripper, town of Bennington. Ed, I had seen your post about this resolution, and it had actually inspired me to write a statement to this resolution, which goes as, basic American rights are at risk not just from oppressive laws or corrupt leaders, but from ease with which we justify cruelty in the name of righteousness. As we debate who bears responsibility to stand up to political bullies, we must also confront a deeper truth, that some people are drawn not to justice, but the psychological luxury of resentment. As Aldous Huxley warned, I think I pronounced his name wrong. Yeah. The surest way to work up a crusade is to promise people they'll get to assault someone. When cruelty is wrapped up in the language of virtue, it becomes seductive. With that said, I'd like to ask you guys a question. Will this article attacks on our Second Amendment, Article 16, and Article 18 of our state constitution, will those be part of the resolution as well? Because currently, in Vermont, we have restrictions on our constitutional right to defend ourselves in the case of a 30-round magazine limit, And in Burlington, they are trying to make it on a state level to ban people from going to their favorite bar of choice and to be able to carry a defense tool. So I just want to know, is that going to be part of the resolution, or is this just a one-sided resolution aiming towards Democratic needs and not Republican needs? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone that hasn't spoken, who wishes to speak? Second row.
Tyler Colfan, Bennington, Vermont. I think the resolution sounds good and valuable, but beyond the scope of a resolution, I would like to see the town and select board explore and clearly communicate what official actions they can take to protect residents from undue violations, and come up with explicit protocols in those instances.
Second row here.
Colleen Kelly. I spoke last week on this, and I'm the person who brought this resolution forward, and I would really fervently like to thank every single person who's here, and I do mean every single person, those who agree, those who have questions, those who object, and those who would like more information and more education. The fact that we as a community are able to come together to have this as a conversation, not as an argument, not as in a debate, to me is truly heartwarming. And I really do thank every single one, every person who's here, and especially every person who has taken the time and the courage to speak. I truly mean that from the depth of my heart. I would also like to repeat my words at the end of the last session, and that is that I truly, fervently, and humbly request that this resolution be passed. In the work that I have done as a physician for more than 30 years, in the work that I have done as an Air Force officer for almost 30 years, what I've seen across this nation and across the world really helped to educate me even further into the depth of the Constitution, which we study quite at length in certain portions of our military training. And I would leave you with the words, actually, of the Gettysburg Address, which is an address given by President Lincoln in November of 1863 when our nation had been torn apart, when people were not able to come together to listen to each other, not able to come together on behalf of each other, and not able to come together to honestly and calmly present their points of view and to be heard. And that is 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth in this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all are created equal. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack, I got to get everybody that hasn't had a chance to speak, Maria.
Hi there, Jack Rossiter Munley, Bennington, Vermont. I wanted to say just a couple of things. The first is to reiterate something that came up at the Know Your Rights training that was hosted at the Multicultural Center by Joel Martin Diaz, who's the executive director of the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, a longtime immigration lawyer. And they made the point that the basic right that applies to everyone who is in the United States, regardless of your immigration status, is the Constitution. And I think wherever we fall on the political spectrum, we all have a great deal of respect for the Constitution as the underlying law of the land. And we are at a point where it feels very important for a town to come together and restate its commitment to the underlying constitutional rights that apply to all of its residents, because that is what is happening here. We are saying that these are so important that it is a time to reaffirm our commitment to them, because we do see instances where they are not being honored. And I am here as well because I know a lot of people who are residents of Bennington who, because of unconstitutional actions in other parts of the country or other parts of the state, feel unsafe. And these kinds of actions, even if they seem no more than symbolic as a proclamation, are a statement of welcome to people who are feeling scared. And they are a statement from those of us who are community members, and they are a statement from those of you who we have put in positions of power, that everyone who is a resident of this community matters, that you care about everyone who is a resident of this community, and that they will all of do. That is no more and less than more. And I appreciate that this is before the board right now, and I sincerely hope that it will be adopted.
Okay, anyone else that has not spoken that wishes to speak? If I'm not seeing you, please raise your hand higher. Okay, is Maria?
I've spoken with many friends and neighbors who are Republican, Democrats, liberals, it doesn't matter. And there seems to be this consensus that everyone agrees that due process is afforded to everyone. But the issue seems to be procedural due process. Are they following the procedures to ensure that due process is given to everyone? So then there's one side of the argument that says, well, there's an extended arm of the Constitution. Those are congressional laws that were given to those constitutions. And if those laws are broken, then anyone can lose those rights in the Constitution. So this is the issue that's always been discussed among my friends. Is not due process, because everyone is entitled to due process. Is the procedural due process. Are they following the procedures to ensure that everyone has due process? And did they lose those constitutional rights when they broke laws? Because Congress extends those constitutional benefits with laws that they create. Congress itself creates laws that aligns with the Constitution. So these are the things that I've always wanted to learn. You know, I can't make a true assessment, a decision, unless I understand the difference between due process and the other terms using the word due process as well. And that's why I said it's very difficult for me to accept you making a decision without me knowing all the facts. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. All right. I think we've heard from a pretty broad spectrum of the public. Is there anyone else that feels the need to speak on something that hasn't been said? All right, then I will bring this back to the board. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept the resolution as read.
For the purpose of discussion, I'd like to second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Sarah, a second from Ed. Who would like to speak?
Good evening. I apologize. I'm having an unstable connection here, so I apologize. At times inconsistent communications in either direction. Standing by to participate in the outcome.
Okay, Clark, why don't you go ahead? We have you working and we have you on. Did you have something you wanted to speak to?
Oh, yes, excuse me. At my end is where I see the problem with the inconsistent communication. I understand everything that's being said in this resolution, but one thing I find quite confounding to me is about this time last year, I actually approached the Charter Review Committee because I took note when I was sworn into office that the first time in my life I ever was in an official government position, I was not required to swear an oath to support and defend the U.S. Constitution. I see we're now being asked to take a position on a very document that people within our town felt were not important enough to be included as part of our responsibility as people's representatives in Bennington, that we in fact would serve in accordance with and under the provisions of the United States Constitution. But on that note, my other concern is what I consider inconsistency. Oh, yes, I did. Can you hear me? I can't tell.
We can hear you.
You could advise them to not also have CAT TV on because they're only 7 seconds away. I think that's what's causing the problem.
Okay. Jonah just told us to relay to you, Clark, that if you have the CAT TV feed on, that may be a cause of the delay that you're experiencing. Right. think this exemplifies some of the challenges we've had with hybrid meetings, unfortunately. Clark, can you hear me?
Yeah, again, I didn't bring it up my end, and I apologize. But I just want to make clear that we have some, in my opinion, inconsistencies in the application and enforcement of the laws of this nation, which are all predicated and based on the Constitution. And one of my major concerns is the absence of. Well, actually, yeah, I'm going to try to turn. I turned it on because I was having a hard time hearing what was going on. But the is that coming across still?
We can hear you.
I can't hear what you're saying, Tom. I'll step back and let other people speak until we get some technical issues resolved. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Who would like to speak next? Anyone?
I will.
Okay, Jackie?
I want to thank everyone that came out and voiced their support or their opposition of this. I know these can be uncomfortable conversations. I think that this is an issue that hopefully we can all agree on, regardless of sort of our political leanings, right? I've heard some misunderstandings throughout the conversation. This resolution does not create any new rights. It does not defy federal law. And I think if we're going to start looking at due process rights as a partisan issue, then we're in far deeper trouble as a country than we previously realized. I do want to mention that Justice Antonin Scalia, a very conservative man, in his decision in 1993, Reno versus Flores, said that the Fifth Amendment clearly entitles aliens, that is, immigrants, documented or undocumented, the right to due process rights during deportation proceedings. That's clear case law from the Supreme Court that's been laid out and has not been contested really ever until now. This board has, in fact, as another member mentioned, a member of the public mentioned, adopted the Declaration of Inclusion in October of 2021. That was, again, in response to some national discord. So there is precedent for the board acting in this way to affirm the rights of Bennington residents. That's the goal here, I think, is to affirm the rights that Bennington residents have. I appreciate that this resolution is more concise than the one that was originally adopted in Rutland, and I generally support its intent. I would like to see, as another member of the public mentioned, a clear sort of action item that follows on to this, asking the town manager and our chief law enforcement officer to affirm that our procedures and rules indeed protect the rights that we claim to uphold. That's not a political maneuver, that's just responsible governance. As far as concerns about government overreach that I've heard, I absolutely agree with those concerns. I think this resolution is exactly what needs to be done to protect from that kind of government overreach. This resolution is designed to address just that, government overreach. And while the Select Board is not required to swear an oath of allegiance to the U.S. Constitution, as my colleague represented, and I want to be clear that as I was on the Charter Review Committee, I don't think we ever said that the Constitution was not important to uphold. I think that's a misinterpretation of how we responded to that request, but that request was made, and I expect that my vote tonight will stand as evidence of my fidelity to that document.
If I may.
Ed?
Thanks. I want to start out, as Jackie did, by thanking everybody who came to speak tonight. This is it's a time that we're in where it's worth discussing these things. Let me start by thanking Colleen Kelly for raising the issue with us last week. The issue that Colleen raised comes from her medical and military experience, which gives us some round background, and I appreciate that it came from that sort of round background. To address some of the concerns that I've heard tonight, it's a simple resolution. I think that some of the folks that are concerned might be perhaps trying to challenge it by reading more into it than it says, and I'm not going to do that in my interpretation of the resolution. This resolution reminds me that all people have the right to due process. People don't lose their rights when they break the law. That is when it is necessary for their rights to be enforced. So I find it important that we raise that issue. When criminal activity happens, it is more important for due process to be in play and in effect. I heard a comment that this board should not take up things that are not financial in nature. We have a lot of responsibility outside of finances. The town vision statement, as has already been mentioned here tonight, is a clear indicator of that responsibility. I heard some concerns about how this might affect other constitutional amendments. I'm not going to look for that because I believe that the resolution stands on its own face. There is no implication here that any other right or responsibility of people in this country is any different than this resolution implies. I heard specific action required, and I appreciate that. At the beginning of this debate, some months ago, and I think we can all remember this, we happened to have the chief of police in for, I think, a quarterly update. And there was a question from the public about whether or not our local law enforcement would be assisting ICE operations in Bennington. If you all remember when we first became fearful that ICE would appear on our doorstep. The reason that we have to follow through with specific action, and this is certainly on our chief law enforcement officer, as has been mentioned, helping, assisting, I think the word was assisting ICE in its operation, if those operations are lawful, is appropriate. That is part of the protections that we all enjoy as citizens and as law-abiding citizens. So it would make sense to me that our law enforcement would be in support of operations that were geared to protect us and to provide due process to those who may have broken the law. Without that assistance or cooperation, we're leaving ourselves vulnerable. So I think it's important that we take the steps for specific action. I think that's all I have to say. And as another colleague said, I think my vote on this will speak to my commitment to the Constitution. But I'm disappointed that a couple of folks have mentioned politics in all of this. I don't see politics in our Constitution, and I don't see politics on this board or
Jim?
Thank you. And again, thank you to everyone for coming out and speaking to this. I hope that no one disagrees with the words in this resolution. I mean, the words just basically say that people in Bennington should be afforded their constitutional rights. It's as straightforward as that. The question is whether or why this resolution needs to be acted upon now. And I sincerely wish that it didn't need to be acted upon now. But actions that have been taken in this country and indeed in communities in the state of Vermont against people legally here in the state of Vermont, but people, regardless of their status, has been mentioned, clearly show that this is necessary because they have clearly been denied due process. And so while this is largely symbolic and other actions and protocols perhaps need to be established about responses to some of these activities locally, I think at the very least we can do at this time is to make a clear statement that we, as a community, as Board of Selectmen representing the people of Bennington, believe that the constitutional rights of everyone in Bennington should be protected. Thank you.
Nancy?
I think many of us knew before we entered high school. We are a country that welcomes immigrants, and we also know there is a process immigrants need to follow to be in this country legally. And this is where the issue will split the people of Bennington, the state, and the country. You know, before you get to everything else, if people are not coming to the country following the legal process, what is the issue? I don't recall hearing much about this in my lifetime. It's all been in recent years. And so again, this is the issue before you get to anything else. If you're legally in the country, if you have followed the federal law that has been in place for generations, then there shouldn't be an issue. And you will have the support from everyone. But as we hear more and more excuses, well, there are people who shouldn't have to follow the legal process. Well, why not? Everybody else who's been coming in, they've done it the right way. I've met people who had to wait years while their family members were already here, but they did it the legal way. And I think some of these are the people who get most upset when they hear, well, people shouldn't have to follow the process to be in the country legally. So I think this is where most people are going to have the issue.
Yeah, may I? Sorry.
Yep, Sarah?
So I just want to echo what my colleagues on the board, Jim Sullivan and Ed were mentioning. And I'm just feeling a little bit of nostalgia here right now. I'm sorry, did somebody mention they couldn't hear me? I'm feeling a little bit of nostalgia just looking at constitutional rights. Help, please. I'm having a seizure.
You okay?
Nope.
Do you need help?
Yes.
Sorry.
Let's just lay her down, please.
No, I'm good. No, I don't need to do that.
Okay, so what do you need? What'll help?
Nothing, I'm good.
Okay, it stopped? Do you
Yeah.
want me to just stay here with you? Just
No.
with you this side?
No.
Like a therapy dog?
No.
Okay.
Do you want to
Thank
finish?
you. Yes, yes. Thank you for bearing with me. Yes, so I will preface that with, as many of you know and now know, I have epilepsy, and that was one of my seizures. So thank you for bearing with me. And now I will continue. So I was just kind of and this is what happens after I have one as well. So I was just kind of thinking about third grade field trip I had and visiting Gettysburg and picking up the Constitution. And if anybody's done that, you get that piece of paper, that Constitution comes in such a cool sheet when you're a third grader. You open it up and you're just like, wow, this is amazing. So, and families go, just each side of the aisle, you see them. It's just, it's just kind of like, why would I not say reaffirming constitutional rights? It's just, I don't know. And thank you for bearing with me because I'm still in that post-ictal state, as many of you know at this moment. So thank you, I appreciate that. So now I'll just kind of stop there because I'm still recovering, as many of you might know. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to take a moment here to speak on this, and I've heard what about my colleagues have said here, and I agree with some and disagree with others, as often happens on boards. When I kicked off my re-election campaign a few months ago, it was shortly after the national election, and one of the things I talked about that day was the fact that I knew that there were people in my community who are my neighbors who were and are afraid. Whether that fear is justified or not isn't really relevant because they are feeling it, and we need to acknowledge it. And I said at that point in time that I would do whatever I was able to do to make sure that the town of Bennington is a town where they can feel welcome and unafraid. And I think this resolution, while perhaps symbolic, perhaps performative, you can make all those arguments, I still think it does do that, because these folks, regardless of their status, if they live in our town, they are our neighbors. I understand that there is an argument that if folks came here illegally, then that changes something. I couldn't disagree more. I think it makes it more important that government actually adheres to the principles that were laid out in the Constitution. The Constitution says all people, and that is all there is to it. The only place in the Constitution where it mentions the word citizen is where it lays out how you become one. Otherwise, and I don't think our founders, they knew that their words mattered. So if they had meant citizen, they would have said citizen. They said people. And that, to me, is the bottom line on where I'm making my decision around these kinds of things. I do support this resolution. I think it's important. I think it is definitely within the purview of this board, as people have discussed. And I appreciate everyone coming out and speaking civilly on this matter. That is American, and that is to be honored. So with that, if anyone else on our board has anything else they want to add, Jackie?
I have two quick things. I just want to make it absolutely clear that I did not hear any member of this board, nor do I see anywhere in this resolution support for someone coming to this country illegally. Affirming that someone who may have come to this country illegally still has rights is a different issue than supporting someone coming here illegally. The second thing I have is I'd like to call for a roll call vote on this issue. I move for a roll call vote.
Can I have one thing?
May I speak?
Yep, Clark, if we could hear you, that's great.
Hi, great, thank you. One of the things I've been following in the news and video is the ongoing functions of our judiciary and the executive branch, and to some degree the legislative branch. And watching how things are playing out and working out, it seems to me the system in fact is working. There has been no absolutes in either direction amongst all three legs of our formal government, but I steadily see, and even today read again, where our Supreme Court is weighing in on actions, proposed actions, to address various issues within our country. So while this resolution says, yes, we need to do due process and everything entitled to it, my take is I'm watching due process occur every day when I hear of court decisions, court filings, laws being proposed, executive orders or powers being exercised. So I see, in fact, the system is working. There is no one getting their way across the board. There are people who don't like process or what are being said or how it appears. But again, from my observations, I see the system, in fact, is working. We've witnessed right here in our state where individuals have been detained, they've gone through the process, some have been released, some have been deported, some continue to be here, having gone through the due process. And that is, in fact, my opinion, is happening. There is due process. Is it quick and is easy? No. Is it pleasant to look at? No. And are people happy with the way things are going from what I can see? Yes and no. But the system is working. Due process is taking place. It may not be happening the way some people feel it should, or the way people would like it to, but it is happening. And I'm hard pressed to support a resolution that infers due process is not happening. Thank you.
If I may.
Thank you. Ed?
I have to respond to my colleague by reminding us all that one of the reasons that I believe that Dr. Kelly felt motivated to bring this issue locally to our attention, and why our colleagues in Rutland government felt the need for it to be a community effort, is because of the at least 2, maybe 3 national cases that we are all aware of, that we are paying attention to, in which 2 or 3 individuals have been deported without due process. The Supreme Court has ordered their return, and the executive branch, by way of the judicial, is refusing to comply. That's my reminder. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy?
I would just remind everybody, we have a town mission statement. About 50 citizens gathered just a few years ago to work on that mission statement. And by the time the board voted on it, everyone in Bennington had a chance to read it. And I think it explains what we're about in Bennington. I don't think this is necessary, and I would respond to Ed. How many people in this country, it's a small percentage of what we're talking about, but how many people in this country have been killed by people who were not legally in the country? They were not offered due process. There's very little you can offer your family. And this is one of the concerns that people have. If people are able to get in who never should have gotten in here, how much due process do they have more than their victims? So I think there's 2 sides on this that a lot of people talk about.
All right, Jim, and then I think we can vote on this.
I think so. I just want to make one last statement, because the attention here seems to be diverted off the point of the resolution and onto questions of immigration. And I just want to point out that the most egregious examples of denial of due process that we've seen in Vermont have been perpetrated against people who are legal residents of the state, quite frankly, detained, incarcerated, threatened with deportation without due process for expressing an opinion or a viewpoint that is different than that which is held by the President of the United States. And that person has the same rights as everybody in this room. So it does not have anything to do with their immigration status. It applies to me and everybody on this board, everybody in this room, and everybody in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the resolution?
Roll call, please.
Is there any objection to a roll call?
None.
Okay. Then I will start with Nancy.
No.
Sarah?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Wholeheartedly, yes.
Clark?
No.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for speaking.
All right, next one that I hope will have no no disagreement. We have a proclamation honoring EMS Week, and I have asked Ed if he would please read the proclamation.
So I'm going to read the proclamation, and I'm very glad that the chair asked me to do that because I spent some time with our EMS over the last year or so because I was the select board liaison, got to know some of those folks. And for those of you that have not had the opportunity to need those folks, I am one of the citizens of Bennington that recently did. So I think every week is EMS week, but I'm going to read the proclamation and we'll go from there, okay? Whereas, the proclamation is EMS week, whereas May 18th through 24th, 2025 marks the 51st anniversary of Emergency Medical Services Week. This year's theme, We Care for Everyone. Whereas emergency medical services provided by the Bennington Rescue Squad is a vital public service, and whereas the members of EMS teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical services fills healthcare gaps by providing important out-of-hospital care, and whereas the members of the EMS teams engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continued education to enhance their life-saving skills, and whereas it is important to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating the Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, we, the Bennington Select Board, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th through 24th, 2025 as Emergency Medical Services Week.
Thank you very much, Ed. I would typically ask for public comment on this if you know what, you're the best one to speak for, I think, everyone here.
I swear, this was not a plant. I cannot tell you how much we value the services of EMS. We could not do what we do in the emergency department without them. The things that they deal with, the places they go, the care they give, the calmness and kindness and compassion with which they provide that care. Even when they see somebody like me at 3 in the morning who's cranky because it's the 18th person that night. Right? I love you too. But seriously, acknowledging them, a week isn't enough, a year isn't enough, a decade isn't enough. So having a week to now acknowledge what they do, they keep people alive to get them to us so that we can then do what we can do, and sometimes with them still at the bedside, lending a hand in order to help save that person's life. It's the fact that we have such an incredible team in a town this size speaks to their devotion, their dedication, and just how amazing each and every one of them are as an individual. So I'm totally 16,000% agree.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. All right, could I please have a motion?
I will make that motion first. I think it's appropriate tonight.
Second.
All right. Did we have a second?
Jackie, second.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the board?
Thanks for your help tonight, guys.
All right, hearing nothing else. All in favor of the EMS Week proclamation, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are, of course, unanimous. I will point out that we have members of our EMS squad in the back of the room. Please do show your appreciation.
Can I get a picture of all of them by the podium? Would that be okay?
Yep.
Thank you all very much. Okay, moving on. Next, we have the Solid Waste Implementation Plan. Scott Grimm-Lyon is here to talk to us about that.
Could I get clarification on this agenda item? Is this going to include the town's hazard mitigation plan, or is that separate?
This does not include the hazard mitigation plan. This is a 13-town countywide plan for handling of solid waste and household hazardous waste.
Okay, then my concern is what I raised last week. The public and the board only has until June 2nd to comment on this hazard plan that the BCRC has been working on. We don't have another meeting before June 2nd. I raised a couple of real concerns at the last meeting that I thought we were going to be able to address with the BCRC this week.
Nancy, that plan's going to come to the board for review and approval. So it would be great if you guys could review and send comments in now, but your authority to review and approve it does not stop at June 2nd. That's just the public comment period. It will be presented to you. You'll have an opportunity to recommend changes. You'll have an opportunity to approve it or deny it. That's all within your purview. So please do not be concerned. We're not trying to bypass the select board's authority or
Okay,
anything.
so we aren't going to be voting on this.
Not tonight, but you will be in the future.
But if everyone needs to comment by June 2nd, we need to have this cleared up before then, or we need to table this. There's a section in there, disaster debris plan, and it talks about getting reimbursed from FEMA. Well, the
I'd appreciate hearing the
I
presentation.
can answer that question if you'd like.
If we could just hear the presentation, that would enlighten all those.
I think
Thank
that's
you.
best.
Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Grimm-Lyon. I'm with the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance. The Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance is a interlocal contract between 13 towns, largely in the Bennington County area. We also throw Searsburg in there, even though they're one county over on the mountainside. But what the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance does is we help all of the towns meet state requirements that have been laid out in the state's materials management plan. And every 5 years, we update our numbers for the state, and we express to them how we're going to meet those requirements that are set out in the state materials management plan by writing this solid waste implementation plan. The state sets a number of requirements for all of the municipalities across the state when it comes to waste management, and this plan outlines how we are complying with that state law and what our plans over the next 5 years are going to be for the way that we will continue to comply with that law. The law is the solid waste implementation plan, like I said, is kind of a pro forma. The state sends us a number of requirements, and we have to fill in the blanks. So we say how many. They say you have to meet this many businesses per this many residents. So we look at the number of residents in Bennington County. That's about 35,000. And then according to the state, it means we have to annually visit 40 businesses a year, as outlined in this plan. Other aspects outlined in the plan include our school outreach program, our program related to hazardous household waste collection, and a number of other things like keeping track of a number of landfill banned materials and making sure that there is adequate collection services available for people in the area for all those items. In the very appendix, there's a nice outline that shows where everything from your textile collection boxes to your car batteries to used oil, to paints can be dropped off from the public. We keep track of that all across the county, and we keep and store all that information on our website, and we make it available to the public on our website. We have a very nice, user-friendly A to Z list on our website, and the website and maintenance of the website is also covered in this, what types of information we're required to have on that website. But it's a list where people can just put in whatever they're interested in seeing. Fluorescent bulbs, put it in, boom, gives you the information on where you can dispose of that, how you can dispose of that, no matter where you are, if you're living in Pownell, if you're living in Dorset, if you're living in Bennington. We have all that information gathered, organized, and available for the public to review. This plan has very few new mandates or updates from the state that we have to go over here. And one is what Nancy actually mentioned, which is there is a review for debris, to create a debris management component to planning. And this is just a promise that we are making in this plan, saying that we will work on this for the next couple of years, and that we will work with folks like you're working with Dara, my colleague at BCRC, on that hazard mitigation plan. And we will work with the other folks in the emergency management services to be able to designate a place within each township where, in case of emergency, the plans are already, set up and aligned so that the public can drop off in these locations, and that the emergency management people will understand how to properly organize and sort waste at that facility, and that the solid waste districts will be helping during that process in the future now. The only other material change is a slight change in website requirements, which is just to make them, text scalable for, ADA accessibility and colorblind accessibility as well. Otherwise, it's very similar to the previous plan that was passed by this board and amended actually just 2 years ago when we created the household hazardous waste facility.
Okay. Thank you. That was very to the point, which I appreciate. And so we're looking for a motion today, I'm assuming, to adopt this plan?
Yeah, as part of the interlocal contract, each of our 13 towns gets to weigh in on this. And, I'm also here if you have any other questions about our program, if you have any thoughts about solid waste management in the area, here to, obviously you have a full agenda tonight, but happy to offer my availability to you to bring this up and, to be accountable to all of the towns that are our member towns in the Alliance.
Okay, very good.
So for purpose of discussion, I'd like to make a motion that we accept as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Nancy?
Starting when the budget starts on July 1st, we'll pay in Bennington $94,000 to the BCRC to manage this. When I read about all the other schools that you work with, do all the school districts and independent towns in Bennington County, do you bill them for the work you do in the schools?
So we bill each town in Bennington proportional to the population. So Bennington pays for 44% of our budget because they have 15,000 residents among the 34,000 residents of Bennington County, of the area, rather, that not of Bennington County, but of the total residents of our township. So all of the billing is divided based proportionally on population. So Bennington does pay the most towards our budget, but that is because they are the largest town.
But are the schools, are they billed to pay for their share with so much of the work you do with the schools?
So, no, the school outreach is a requirement from the state that the solid waste management districts pay for outreach to schools themselves.
Well, that's probably something they should look for, so the school could pay their share rather than the towns paying the town and the school share. I was surprised in here that you list 3 of the 13 towns. I can go through and read all their policies for their landfills. And I would hope next time Bennington would be listed as the biggest town, because it was interesting, all the different policies and different ways the 3 other towns do it. I have no idea the details as far as Bennington, and I would think as the biggest town paying the most, we would have that in here.
The legislation in the appendix is part of a state mandate called the pay-as-you-throw laws, is kind of what they're called. Yeah, that's, and Bennington has an identical to one of those statutes listed there. They're all, they were all based on model legislation that was passed by my predecessor in the position.
And also, there's a letter in here right at the end from someone at Windham County congratulating that Bennington County is complying with the Windham County policy.
Yeah, and that's because one of the 13 towns in our alliance is technically in the Windham County Regional Commission, not in the Bennington County Regional Commission. So because the members of Searsburg are also part of our alliance, all of the borders, municipal borders, fire department borders don't match, town borders, judicial borders don't always match the same, what the sheriff calls the county isn't the same as what BCRC calls the county. So, it's just one of those quirks of local government that we happen to have one of our towns in Windham County.
So that led all of Bennington County to have to follow the Windham County plan, or is it just Woodford?
It's just Searsburg.
Searsburg, sorry.
Yeah. And only Searsburg has to follow the rules according to Windham County.
Okay, and I'll go back to page 15, the disaster debris plan, and I am reading, that there is some hazardous materials, and I'm hearing about the FEMA reimbursement, so I'm not comfortable until I can have somebody explain, do we actually have a plan or not in Bennington to be able to vote on this tonight?
Jim?
Scott, I just wanted to say thank you. Good job with this. Basically, what this solid waste implementation plan looks like, I never thought I was going to read another one, but here I am. But it's really a documentation of the steps that the Alliance needs to take, working with the municipalities to effectively manage solid waste for those communities in the context of certain specific state requirements. So I take it that all of the various steps that are enumerated in here have probably been cleared with the Agency of Natural Resources.
Yeah, this was a template provided by the Agency of Natural Resources, and most of what we filled out was most of what we provided on our end was just creating the formulas to fill out the template properly. The only thing that again, there's not much, the language specifically around household hazardous waste is kind of our own, but it's all based on state requirements as far as the number of required days to be open when you have a permanent facility and everything like that as well. So, yeah, effectively, it's largely a reiteration of state law, but broken down into small pieces, saying year one, these are what our activities are going to be at Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance. Year two, these are what our activities are going to be at, Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance for the next 5 years in order to meet those requirements.
Anyone else? All right, then I will call for a vote on the question. All those in favor of adopting the plan as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nope.
Abstentions? All right, I'll say the ayes have it with Nancy opposed. I did not hear from Clark, so.
Okay, yeah, I
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the Walloomsac Valley Pathway Extension, Part 2, as I described it. We discussed it at length at our last meeting last week, and it was suggested with support from much of the board that we take some time to hear community comment. I will say that since we've had community comment available on the website, easily accessible, I can't remember any other time where we got more feedback from the community. I didn't count them all exactly, to tell you the truth.
I did.
Okay, go ahead.
44.
40, we got 44 comments?
44 in favor, 1 opposed.
44 in favor
I
of the
got
resolution.
47, but I think I may have included.
Somewhere in the mid to upper 40s.
Jim must have deduped it, or Jackie deduped it, or
Well,
somebody.
there were actually a couple that came in by email that were distributed.
Okay, so, and I do think that was a useful practice, and I think it spoke to the public support of this project.
So for the purpose of discussion, I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
That we accept the proposal to extend the Williamsack Valley pathway as outlined in our meeting last week. And while I'm making the motion, Tom, I just want to mention the value that came out of this board working together last week. Whatever the outcome is of this vote tonight, I feel strongly about opening it for public comment for the week.
Do we have a second?
Second. Sorry.
All right. Any further discussion from the board?
Yeah, I was a little surprised it didn't pass last time. We have the cemetery in Old Bennington already. That's beautiful. It brings so many tourists in. So, but happy to vote on it again. So hope it passes.
Nancy, I saw your hand.
Yeah, many of the people who spoke in favor talked about it being safe. I haven't heard anything about how we're proposing that bikes should be put in the road it's going to be safe. I didn't hear how wide the bike lanes are going to be. Cars are still going to be able to park in the bike lanes. I don't know if that's legal. I don't feel it's safe. The bikes are all going to be on the same side of the road, meaning they'll be passing themselves in opposite direction as the cars going by. I don't know if that's legal. Didn't hear anything at all about the corner of Safford and Main that I think is a very tricky intersection. Don't know how many accidents have been there within the past 10 years, what caused them, were there injuries. I will check into that. I think to have a bike path coming there, which is Route 9, I have a lot of concerns. If the Ben High goes forward, I predict cars will be parked on both sides of the street all the way to Safford. That takes away visibility. So there's a lot of details that I don't think we've discussed, and I wish we could do this. I mean, growing up in Bennington, all the kids, we hopped on our bikes in the summer. We rode to North Bennington, Old Bennington, Pownell. You didn't have as many cars. They weren't going as fast. People didn't have phones, so they actually watched where they were going. But the big thing for me, is it going to be safe? I don't want anybody getting in an accident and hit by a car or a bike running into a car. And then there is the economic development aspect of it. Most people don't understand the long-term plan for Bennington when it comes to the lack of parking on the streets and how the public parking lots in the downtown are going to be used. So until we have a big discussion, I think there's a lot of people that just don't understand all the details.
I'd like to call the question.
All right. We have called the question. So, all those in favor?
Excuse me, I would like to ask another question if possible here, Tom.
Is it quick?
As I recall the last meeting, one of the things I was interested in, maybe I'm getting over my skis, is I know this path to go to Headwaters Park is fine. I'm just wondering where this plan, or is there a plan for expansion beyond Headwaters Park? Or if someone could answer that for me or direct me in the right direction, I'd appreciate it.
Although that's not part of what we're debating.
Yeah, so you're asking what the plan is going forward if we should adopt this?
Well, correct. If we're going to adopt this, where are we going from there? You know, just an open end that we're not certain, or is this the terminal location, or what? That's what I'm interested in. Part of the big picture, I know we're trying to tie this in with pre-existing trails and so forth. But
right.
Again, as I mentioned last week, what I'd be interested in seeing, part of this is the long-term plan, where we're going.
I appreciate the question, but I'm afraid that I don't think that it's actually relevant to the motion at hand. I'll point out that our trail system overall has been kind of constructed one in a piecemeal fashion up until this point, and it looks kind of like that's the way it's going to continue to be headed. But do you have, to speak, right now, all that we can talk about on the agenda is this particular extension, but I do appreciate your question.
But Tom, may I ask, have there been discussions about connecting this to the land that we thought was going to be the southern leg of the bypass until the state said no?
There are the only formal discussions underway at this point in time is this one. There may be people discussing things and making wish lists elsewhere in town, but that is not the business of this board at this point in time. If they do decide that they want to request such things, then they can bring them before this board and we can discuss them.
Well, I remember it was brought up briefly here a couple of months ago, so I didn't know if people were actually discussing that land.
Yeah, well,
So, Tom, if I could just remind us that last week we heard that this was the extent of the plan up until this point, and the property in question is owned by the state and is likely to be deeded back to the town or an entity that may take that up, but that is what we have to look for before it becomes an item that this board is likely to debate. At least that was my take on what we heard last week, Tom.
yeah, and I would agree.
Okay.
So, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
And I don't believe there's any left for abstentions.
And-
All right, thank you very much.
And for just a final comment, Clark, I'd be happy to go over the plan details and the long-range plan. It's really outlined in the Bennington Town Plan as well. Thank you.
Next, we have the manager's report.
Yes, I'll try to be brief. I have one action item. It is a request for a variance to the vendor's ordinance. Our current vendor's ordinance limits the size of food trailers and/or trucks to no more than 7 feet by 12 feet, with an eye to operating in a downtown parking space. Neil Dumas, who is the owner of Double D's Food Trailer, is asking for a variance to operate a trailer 8 by 18 at his current location in the Bennington Auto Mart. His current trailer meets the ordinance, and he'd like to expand his offering and needs a larger vehicle to do so. I'm suggesting a motion to approve the variance on the condition that he remains in his current location, which is on private property, and/or he always remain on private property and not try to locate within a parking space in the downtown while operating within the town of Bennington. I see no other reason not to grant the variance.
All right, could I hear a motion to that effect?
So for purposes,
Can I ask a question, Mr. Hurd? I have a question on that.
we thought we'd get a motion.
Yeah, let's get the motion, Clark, and then we can discuss.
So for purpose of discussion, I also have some questions. I'd like to make the motion that we approve the variance as requested.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay. So, Clark, you had a question.
Now, with this variance, does this restrict this gentleman from participating in the food truck activities when they occur in town?
I don't believe that it does. Generally, when these festivals are vendor operations that are a combined operation are allowed by the town, we leave it to the organizers to get the appropriate permits for all who participate. So I don't believe it would restrict him. Generally, we close streets for the purpose of these kinds of festivals, and he should not be hurt by that change.
May I?
That was my only concern. I didn't want
May I?
You may.
to
Go ahead,
close
sir.
the doors for opportunity to this gentleman. Thank you.
So, Clark, I chime in here as someone who operates and runs. It doesn't restrict him, prohibit him, but the 7 by 12 foot is much more desirable for a festival than an 8 by 18 because of the space.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information.
Sure.
Ed, you indicated you had some questions?
Yeah, so now I have a comment and a question. The comment is following up on what Clark and Sarah were just speaking of. It sounds like there's nothing precluding him from applying for participation in the Downtown Food Truck Festival, he would be wise to keep his smaller vehicle if that's at all possible. I just wanted to put that out there for those kinds of operations. And I think this is a question for Stu. Does this trigger any change in any licensing fees or anything that he is required to pay?
No, it does not. The vendor's permits are either a 3-month or an annual basis, and the fee is based on how long you wish to keep the license. If you take an annual license, then you are, especially if you're located in a downtown location, you are guaranteed a first opportunity for that same downtown location. It's not so relevant to being located on private property. As long as he's located on private property, with this variance, he could operate in the town.
Thank you.
And I just want to be specific. It's not specific to the event I promote. It's more specific to business. I operate at different festivals. We have a couple of different sizes so that we can get into festivals.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Sarah. Thank
Yes.
you for clarifying it.
Anything else? Jackie?
Have we adopted or offered similar variances to other vehicles operating, or is this a first?
This is the first request of its kind.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, then all of those in favor of granting the variance as requested, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we are unanimous. Thank you.
And just a couple of announcements. We have been able to schedule 2 of the listening sessions for the coming third Thursday in August and October. The third Wednesday here at the fire facility is now booked by the fire department for monthly trainings, so we had to switch our nights. I trust that those Thursdays will be available to you folks. And they're far enough out that I hope you can plan for them. Remember, we are meeting here June 25th, which is a Wednesday, and then Thursday in August and Thursday in October for future sessions. We have not been able to schedule into December. The room is fairly booked for the month of December, so we may not be able to get you a listening session during that month. But hopefully you'll all enjoy the holidays anyway.
Stu, if I could just quickly ask a question. We had talked about having, leading those listening sessions with a topic and soliciting suggestions from the community and then deciding as a board what those topics might be. Do we have a system in place for doing that?
We don't as yet, but I'll be working with Jonah to get that information up and out to the people once we've established the meeting schedule for the near future.
Thank you.
And just a couple of notes. The door activation system here has been corrected. That was a mistake or an error on the activation system. It has been corrected. I note here, I received word that tonight's Shaftesbury board also approved the resolution on a unanimous basis. And I will say this for the town of Bennington and the Bennington Police Department. I can affirm that all of our policies and procedures are in compliance with state and federal laws. We have been working on this, as you all well know, over the last 3 to 4 years to bring our policies and our procedures into compliance and active. And I believe that we are very much in compliance with all of the necessary rules and regulations. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you.
And that's all I have.
All right, upcoming agendas. I know next month we expect to hear from the Alliance for Community Transformation and some high school youth regarding a project they're working on. We're going to hear from the Bennington County, no, the Community Cafe. Thank you so much. Had the activities they've been engaged with.
We're going to hear from the Energy Committee.
The Energy Committee also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else I'm missing there, Stu?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I unfortunately didn't bring my notes from the last meeting, so.
All right. Other business? Anything?
Hey, do you want to go in order? I can start, Nancy can start, or anybody else can
Well,
go.
I looked to my right, and they shook their heads. So now
They
I'm
shook their
looking to
heads
my-
no?
Yeah.
Well, no,
I don't
mean,
mind
I
starting.
still need an answer, and the public needs to get an answer as far as this hazard mitigation plan.
Okay, so I'm back to other business. Those folks who have initiated interest in serving on a board or commission, you know that we have 2 executive sessions scheduled to conduct those interviews, one for tomorrow and one for Wednesday. Unfortunately, those interviews were scheduled without individual board members' calendars being confirmed, and I am unavailable both nights out of town with prior commitments that I can't get out of. I feel very strongly about those boards and commissions, and I want to apologize to the folks who are either participating now or have reached out and shown interest to participate, that it won't be a complete board. I think that it's super important. And I've looked into other ways that I can weigh in. Because it's executive session, it can't be recorded, it can't be viewed later, and I won't be able to vote because I will not have been present during those sessions. So I'm publicly apologizing. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clark, do you have anything?
Well, I spoke, to you guys briefly on individually about maybe reorganizing the structure of our meeting, but I think that's something we'll have to put as an agenda item, I guess, to sit down and restructure the sequence and order of our meetings.
Okay.
And I want to apologize for the technical difficulties. Maybe I'll spend a couple grand for a cancer computer.
Thank you. I think we could all appreciate the challenges that we're facing with hybrid meetings in this room. It's difficult. All right, so if there's nothing else.
Let me just say, in follow-up to what Clark mentioned, it's a big concern that we don't have the ability to conduct hybrid meetings for folks that sit on this board, and it leads the public to be uncomfortable with access to this board. I've heard that a number of times. So I know that it's being looked at, and I'm sort of looking at staff who are still in the room. But if we can strengthen that in the short order, I think it's super important.
Agreed. All right, we do have need of an executive session to discuss litigation. We will not be taking further action. So with that being said, I will look for a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. We'll call a brief break while folks clear the room.